Sorry about that, folks. We had a bit of a delay, but that's okay. Welcome, everybody. And Derry Bennett, Quad Bennett, Heat, how's it going? Blue Brother, welcome. Hello, howdy, welcome. Sorry about not being able to stream yesterday. I highly recommend to join the Discord so you get all kinds of updates. But apparently, we caught a very, very injured little bird, little house finch, and we took it to the wildlife center, and hopefully that that little finch makes it. But I'll keep you guys updated on how that goes. So from what we understand is it broke its beak, probably smacked itself into something hard enough to break its beak, and as a consequence became very weak, and as a consequence of that, she contracted avian pox, and that's where we're at. She's in a poor state, but if the little bird manages to pull through, then she has a chance. She has a chance to regrow her beak, and if all that happens and all goes well, then she will be released. If I use Discord, I would join. I get that. You deserve a bonus day off every so often. I feel that. I feel that. How was the Oscars? I'm gonna be honest, I didn't watch the Oscars. Yeah. Jimmy Kimmel got a letter from Trump. Was that like during the Oscars that he was tweeting? Not tweeting, posting on his Truth Social website. In any case, no, I did not watch. I did not watch the Oscars. The only thing I did see, though, I saw on Twitter the performance by Ryan Gosling. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. All right, folks, we got stuff to cover, so let's get this started. Before we get started, as always, folks, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. It really does help us out, and join the Discord. Support the channel, spread the word, like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the awesome stuff. If you join the Discord, there's a wonderful community. Plus, we do monthly movie nights. And if you also want to support the channel and you want to wear some cool merch while doing so, you can also check out the merch store. Are you going to cover Katie Britt's response to the State of the Union speech today? No, I don't think so. There's not much to say there, right? Completely unhinged and full of nonsense. Completely unhinged. I mean, it's the Republican Party, right? Still can't decide whether I should laugh or cry after listening. Yeah, it's been covered. And honestly, it's not... how should I put this? There's nothing to gather from that, right? That's what I'm trying to say. Whereas, like, the Biden State of the Union, there's some good parts at the beginning. However, it's hard to consolidate, or it's hard to believe that the president, at least the argument is harder to make, that you are interested in saving democracy while still supporting very, very, very authoritarian figures. It just doesn't make any sense. On that note, yeah, there were some good points. And unfortunately, even though he had all the opportunity and the entire... How long was the speech? Definitely, I think the speech might have been less... I didn't watch the whole thing, but I think the speech was less than an hour. And at no point... in fact, he doubled down on it. At no point did he call for a ceasefire. At no point did I feel like he addressed the ethnic cleansing that's going on. So, that's unfortunate. He had a perfect opportunity. To address that, like, because this is not just the State of the Union, but it's also essentially his last pitch, right? Yeah, but he sure was awake. He was not Sleepy Joe. I can assure you. I can assure you that he was not Sleepy Joe. That much is true. All right, folks, we got lots to cover, so let's get started. I wonder how many Red Bulls he chugged. All the Red Bulls. All the Red Bulls. They pulled out all the stops on this one. For this they pulled out all the stops for the State of the Union speech, that's for sure. All right, folks. I think we should probably start with this one. I have not had the opportunity to cover this, so I guess we'll take a moment to do that. I don't know. I don't know if anyone else has covered it, probably, but nonetheless, according to Republicans, he couldn't have delivered the speech unless he was under drugs. At least what Fox News implied. Yeah. Also, let's not talk about and let's not talk about the evidence and prescriptions under the Trump administration. Let's not talk about that, right? I mean, like, so it's assuming that he was. So, that's the least of the issues, okay? Candace Owens, everybody. By the way, still employed at the Daily Wire. Somehow. Why, you may ask? Why does that matter? Well, I'll have her explain it to you.
Kanye West, notoriously, obviously, when he tweeted out, "I'm about to go DEFCON 3 on some Jews," and the media freaked out, and people in the Jewish community were understandably very scared, not knowing what he meant. And I very much abstained from speaking much about the issue because people were so emotional that people couldn't hear, even if I had shared, and even...
Yeah, so at no point was there any defensible action. Like, first of all, under no, like, there was no context, okay? There was no context where you could potentially twist yourself into pretzels to justify Kanye West's behavior, right? Like there's no justification for what he said. There's none. There's no context that would make it any better. The truth is, he went on some anti-Semitic Nazi rants, okay, which culminated in his appearance in the Alex Jones show, where he famously said, "I love Hitler."
Even when Kanye did share that he was speaking about specific people in Hollywood that he believed were coming.
Yeah, this is nonsense because, like, it's very, very, very known that there's a common trope and Nazi conspiracy theory that, like, somehow, like, you know, Jewish people are controlling the media through Hollywood. So, like, anytime you hear these people talk about, quote, Hollywood elites, they just mean Jewish people, okay? Like, this is unambiguous. This is, like, old Nazi dog whistles, okay? This is old school Nazi dog whistles.
After him and were trying to control him.
Right. So, yeah, again, Nazi dog whistles, you know, Jewish people run the media to control, like, I mean, that's just the way it is. Nothing has changed. Please enable the subtitles. Twitter has not gotten that technology yet, unfortunately.
Rabbi Shmuley Boteach was threatening me, and it wasn't just him, it was also his daughter. They were messaging me saying, "Don't mess with Jews." Very bizarre stuff, and they have not stopped, to be clear. And so what I believe is something that should be explored is whether or not what's happening is that, just like within all communities, there are gangs, right? Gangs can form, we understand this. In the Black community, we've got the Bloods and we've got the Crips. Well, imagine if the Bloods and the Crips were doing horrific things, murdering people, controlling people with blackmail. And then every time a person spoke out about it, the Bloods and the Crips would call those people racist, would get the media to say those people were racist. Any person that was talking about a specific gang, a small group of people, would say.
So, I don't understand. Are you comparing Jewish people to gangs? I'm not understanding. But I don't believe a thing she's saying. Well, nothing here that she's saying makes any kind of sense. Is she saying that that Jewish people are the same as the Bloods and the Crips?
Say, oh my God, no. That's like slavery. You can't at all say anything bad about the Bloods and the Crips. Then the entire Black community believed it and was scared and thought, oh my God, like, is slavery actually coming back? But what if that is what is happening right now in Hollywood, if there is just a very small ring of specific people who are using the fact that they are Jewish to shield themselves from any criticism? It's food for thought, right?
No, it's not, because there's no evidence to suggest that. You just made that up. You just made that up, dude. Like, okay, so the whole thing started because I assume she was talking about, like, Kanye West, and the incredibly anti-Semitic Nazi shit that he was saying. Yeah, exactly. She's just asking questions, right? Specifically, the Jewish question.
Kanye West, notoriously, obviously, when he tweeted out, "I'm about to go DEFCON 3 on some Jews."
Right. So, like, there's no defense for Kanye West's actions at all. Like, there's no context where what he said and what he said on Alex Jones's show is okay. All right, like, there's no, especially, like, with the context that he was appearing alongside a very well-known neo-Nazi, right?
Right? And I think, again, there have been enough people that are speaking out about a ring in Hollywood, also a ring potentially in DC.
Oh man, we're just diving right into it, right? right? There's a ring, a cabal, if you will, of a certain group of people, Jewish people, that are controlling the media, and it just so also happens that there's also a cabal or a ring of a group of a ring of a group of people that are controlling Washington. Yeah, I mean, Jesus, we're going back to the old school Nazi shit, right? Yeah, this has never been This has never before been said.
We should start to ask those questions, all of us.
Yeah, specifically one question, right? The Jewish question, right, Candace? Holy yikes, Batman. Whew. This is bad. And the fact that like she still has the fact that she still has a job, and Ben Shapiro, like, has Ben Shapiro even like made a comment on this at all? Like I think that the most I've ever seen Ben say is like, "Oh, I don't agree with her." Phenomenal. Hey, this time Malak, how's it going? There is a mafia, but it does normal organized crime stuff like the Italian and Irish and Russian. Mafia is not controlling the media, right? Yeah, no, she's just straight up doing the Nazi conspiracy theory, the classic Nazi conspiracy theory where Jewish people control the media, and then somehow she extended that to like Jewish people control the government. There's a group of people that are elites, and they are, controlling the government. And it just so happens that she was also referring to the same group of people that control the media. Yeah. As a German, I've heard that shit before, not from Americans, but I've heard it. Yeah, well.
Black.
There's history.
Spanish, Jewish, Chinese, Japanese, all Americans should want answers, because this appears to be something that is quite sinister.
Yikes. Whew. Yeah, yikes. Just straight up, like, on mainstream conservative online media, just straight up saying, like, we need to be asking questions, specifically, one question. If you catch my drift. And everyone should be interested in knowing, what's going on here. The only thing that's going on is that you're basically repeating Nazi talking points, Candace. That's the sinister part that's happening right now. And the Daily Wire being one of the, if not the biggest conservative media outlets that exist, that consistently make the top lists in terms of conservative media, just mainlining this stuff to to the conservatives. If she didn't mean that stuff seriously, I'd laugh, but I'm afraid she's serious. I mean, even if she didn't mean it, like, doesn't matter, right? Even if she didn't believe a single word that she said, I'm not in the business of trying to, like, read people's minds. We're not going to sit here and try to, like, say, like, oh, well, she actually doesn't believe it. That doesn't matter, And it really doesn't matter if she didn't mean it or meant it. The damage is done, You know what I mean? The damage is done. Even if it's all for the grift, even if it's all for the money that she's being offered at the Daily Wire, it doesn't matter. She's mainlining Nazi shit, and that's pretty disturbing. Yeah, the outcomes are the same regardless. Exactly, like, because we can't really, determine if whether or not somebody believes it, but believes what they're saying, right? Like, it's irrelevant, right? Like, how would you know? unless like you get like a hot mic moment. But again, I guess it doesn't really matter. So that's nice. Just, mainlining Nazi talking points at the Daily Wire. And she still has a show there. Conscious Canuck subscribing with a tier 1 for 24 months. That's exactly 2 years. Thank you. I appreciate that. Howdy. Welcome. This guy saved my stream almost single-handedly. Nice! My sub ran out last week. First opportunity to re-up. Well, I appreciate the support. It went pretty well, though. Good, good, good. On that note, folks, if you haven't already, please go show Heat some support, all right? Go follow. There you go.
If you could snap your fingers and, or had a magic genie, a magic lamp, what type of scenario would you find yourself in?
Thanks, you were making a garden. I think that was a good choice. No problem.
What are we doing?
I'll be home cooking breakfast right now.
The cost of housing is out of control. Across the country, there's an extremely alarming result. More Americans are now homeless than ever on record. But one city has proposed what could be a groundbreaking solution to the homelessness crisis. It's called Bring Chicago Home.
Get ready to see a new ballot question next spring involving taxes and homelessness.
The idea is to take the cash made on the sale of pricey Chicago homes and use that money to put roofs over the heads of the homeless.
Big corporate landlords are not happy about it. They're trying to stop it however they can.
They recognize the national implications of us winning.
We came to find out. What exactly are big landlords so afraid of? And despite their efforts, could Chicago change how we address homelessness in the...
They're afraid of profits. They're afraid of losing profits. That's that's what they're afraid of. Yeah, he was cheering on capitalism pretty hard, all that merch store talk and looking to hire kids for her sweatshop. Sounds about right. Ashley talked about housing access too. I hope Chicago figured it out. Well, I think that might be on the ballot.
This country.
Honestly, now when I think back on it, I was just kind of felt like I was in this purgatory. I felt like I was constantly just living, experiencing something outside of myself.
Lorna Bennett grew up on Chicago's South Side. When she was only 17, her mother, struggling with addiction and mental illness, forced her to leave home. That's when she started doubling up, crashing with friends or family just for a place to sleep.
I wasn't in a shelter and I wasn't on the streets, and that's what was considered homeless. It was just a really confusing time for me. There was no way to identify what I was going through. There was no name for it.
After 5 years of doubling up, Lorna finally caught a break and got into a program that helps her pay the rent. That made it possible for her to move into this apartment, where she lives with her sons.
I didn't unpack a lot of my boxes for years. It took me years to finally start hanging pictures on my wall of my family. I work my butt off constantly. Everybody knows that, and I'm closer to homelessness than I am to ever owning a home right now.
In Chicago, almost 70,000 people are experiencing homelessness. 3/4 of them are living like Lorna was, doubled up with whoever will take them. They aren't considered homeless by federal standards, so they don't have access to reliable funding for housing assistance. Bring Chicago Home would change that.
The cause of homelessness at its core is the lack of access to affordable housing, period. So it's not so much that we don't know the solution. We do know the solution is more permanent affordable housing.
Right, and also like the fact that like the commodification of housing, this is like the inevitable result.
And it's how do we get to that point to have that in place?
Doug Schenkelberg is one of the people who 6 years ago began developing the idea for Bring Chicago Home.
We came in with the idea that we need to find a revenue stream that can achieve this goal. And so we did a lot of research about what would make the most sense. And that's when we landed on the real estate transfer tax.
That's that one-time tax that's paid when real estate is transferred from one owner to another.
Right now, property buyers pay a one-time flat tax of 0.75% of sales.
Chicago's real estate transfer tax is a fee charged when a property is sold. Right now, it's a flat tax at 0.75%. Bring Chicago Home would raise that tax to 2% for properties sold for over $1 million, and it would increase it to 3% for those over $1.5 million. The plan would also lower the tax for properties sold for less than $1 million. In Chicago, that's the vast majority of sales. 93% of buyers would get a tax cut. Advocates for the plan estimate it will raise at least $100 million a year for what they call permanent affordable housing.
One of the main problems we have in our housing system right now is that we treat it as a commodity. We see venture capitalists coming in and utilizing.
There you go. There it is. Yeah, you treat housing like a commodity. That's really the issue. Cities should start writing housing guarantees into the city charters. Yep. For comparison, here in Germany, no one needs to be homeless unless he actively chooses to. You can't be addicted to any drugs, but when you're not, any larger city offers shelters. Yeah, it's not just like offering shelters. It's a matter of like just giving people housing, and no strings attached. You know.
Utilizing the housing market as an investment tool, and so the housing market, the real estate market, functions as an income generator for those folks who are already having. We need government intervention to address what can be called a market failure, right?
Correct.
That our markets aren't designed to serve people experiencing homelessness. If you're talking about a real estate market that is driven by profit, why not tax those high-level profits to serve those people who are cut out of the system because of how we commodify real estate?
One thing about Chicago, for many years, it's been a tale of two cities. This is a big, rich town.
Cesare Moore is an advocate for the homeless who does outreach to people who are living on the street.
We go out to the various tent cities and find homeless people wherever they are, wherever the need is. We give them tents, we give them clothes, we give them hygiene bags. If we can, we give them food. There are people in some of these tent cities living homeless who are working 2 jobs.
Like many of the people organizing.
That's wild. That's wild. One thing that helps people fight their addiction is stable housing. Yes, that's true.
For Bring Chicago Home, Cesare himself is homeless. Right now, he's living at a transitional housing facility that provides meals, mental health care, and job counseling. Those are the types of services that Bring Chicago Home proposes to scale up dramatically across the city. But according to the real estate industry, Chicago cannot afford it.
Don't throw an obstacle at small investors and mid-sized investors who are the key to providing affordable housing in the city.
Our concern with it is that it's going to affect economic activity for an industry that is at a existential challenge.
Nah, they can go after themselves. There are techs in Silicon Valley making $200K a year who have to live in their cars. That's wild. Can you imagine?
I know the commercial market.
Can you imagine making a six-figure salary and still have to live in your car? Yeah, very good system.
in Chicago has suffered a lot in the last year.
The business class in Chicago are really scared about what's been the status quo for a long time being upset, which is them having control, them being able to set the agenda for the city. There's a number of real estate interests, folks who make incredible profits off of real estate transactions.
Sounds great. What sounds great? Person who has been banned from quite a bit of channels there.
Who have lined up in opposition to Bring Chicago Home. The face of the opposition are associations that represent realtors.
How do you foresee an increase affecting downtown high-rises, for example?
It won't be positive.
Bring Chicago Home has the support of the city's new mayor, Brandon Johnson, and a majority of the city council. But unlike most legislation, they can't simply pass it into law. That's because of the power of the real estate lobby. Back in the 1990s, it successfully pushed for a state law that requires a popular vote to change the real estate transfer tax. By erecting that barrier, the biggest real estate players have protected themselves from a progressive tax structure for nearly 30 years.
I do not see a strong affinity between people like ourselves and people who really are representing big corporate residential interest.
Aisha Ray and her husband Paul own an apartment building on Chicago's South Side, where they rent 5 units.
So this building still has, in these rooms, all of its original wood.
They have owned and lived in this building for nearly 40 years. And they personify a split between how small and large landlords are responding to the referendum.
I think other people like my husband and I, who have a 6-flat building, that this legislation will help us and not hurt us. To my understanding, the actual percentage of tax that we will pay will drop. Well, hallelujah. I mean, who could be against this? This sounds like a grand idea. Plus, we're addressing this critical social problem at the same time. I think the critical problem is to look at what are the cost of...
I got banned because I hurt their feelings, so they banned me. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. Don't worry. Don't worry, people like you don't last very long. Believe me, sir, it is. I don't. We'll see how long you actually last here.
68,000 people in the streets in Chicago.
Chat, what's the over-under? Huh? What's the over-under on how long, our friend here is gonna last?
The real estate industry has spent nearly $2 million so far to defeat Bring Chicago Home. On March 19th, the people of Chicago have the chance to decide for themselves.
I think this is the civil rights issue of our time. Housing is a human right. What can you do if you can't have any type of housing security?
I think that more than anything, realtors are afraid of what a group of people like me
About 3 minutes? All right.
can accomplish when we are working together.
Thanks for watching.
Housing should be a human right, okay? Food, housing, education, and healthcare. The first step of survival is always shelter. Exactly. Yeah, these people aren't too lazy to own a home. The system is broken. 100%. Like we just saw, some of those people are working multiple jobs just to be homeless. This sub was my last $8 in my checking. Unfortunately, I believe I get my tax refund tomorrow. Jeez. I hope so too. Don't go making, subscriptions on my account.
I told him, baby, show me pieces. I said, baby, you know I'm come to Jesus. Sir, just. Hot mic felt good. That was good.
Oh, okay.
You just heard President Biden accidentally say something that we definitely weren't supposed to hear during a totally unplanned hot mic moment after his State of the Union address on Thursday. He said he's going to have a heart-to-heart moment with Netanyahu about the war crimes being committed with the bombs that he's giving him. And, from time to time, we'll get
no guilt
stories that somehow leak to the press about how Biden is just really fed up at Netanyahu, and this time he called him an asshole privately. But most people see this for what it is, an attempt to placate his Democratic Party base while not meaningfully changing the policies. Now, in an interview with Jonathan Capehart on MSNBC, he was asked about this hot mic moment, and here's what he said.
You were caught on a hot mic after your State of the Union address talking to Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Senator Michael Bennet saying, quote, I told him, Bibi, and don't repeat this, but you and I are going to have a come to Jesus meeting. What do you mean by that?
What I meant was, it's an expression used in the southern part of my state, meaning a serious meeting. And it was, I've known Bibi for 50 years, and he knew what I meant by it.
So what's the come to Jesus part? Like what tough love are you going to give to the prime minister?
What's happening is he has a right to defend Israel, a right to continue to pursue Hamas, but he must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. He's hurting, in my view, he's hurting Israel more than helping Israel by making the rest of the world, it's contrary to what Israel stands for. And I think it's a big mistake. So I want to see a ceasefire.
So stop giving him the bombs? ?
And I'm starting with a major exchange of prisoners for a 6-week period. We're going into Ramadan. It should be nothing happening. And we should build off of that ceasefire. And look, I've spoken with the majority of the Arab leaders from Saudi Arabia to Egypt to Jordan. They're all prepared to fully recognize Israel and begin to rebuild the region. And that's the focus. What comes after Gaza? What's next? It's a tough decision, but there's a lot that can be done.
So his plan is to have a stern talking to with Netanyahu and explain to him how this genocide in Gaza runs counter to Israel's own interests, and he should probably stop. Now, he's right about that. Their reputation internationally is in the gutter, but Biden is saying, if you listen to me, I can help you repair these relationships with Arab countries in the region, but you've got to listen first. Help me help you. Now, that's all well and good, but this is a very naive position for Biden to take. The carrot approach has failed, and now it's time for the stick approach. Netanyahu has made it very clear he is not going to listen to Biden unless he cuts off weapons and stops vetoing ceasefire resolutions on the UN Security Council. I think anything short of that is going to be woefully inadequate. Netanyahu isn't going to suddenly have this change of heart if you say the right words to him. He is a war criminal doing a genocide and needs to be treated as such.
True. Yeah, what comes after the ethnically cleansing? What comes after the ethnically cleansing is done is a hell of a thing to say.
Now, Biden was asked if he has any red lines, such as an invasion of Rafah, for example, which he is cautioning Israel against doing. And his answer here is, I think, going to perfectly demonstrate exactly why Netanyahu isn't listening to anything that Biden is saying.
What is your red line with Prime Minister Netanyahu? Do you have a red line? For instance, would invasion of Rafah, which you have urged him not to do, would that be a red line?
It is a red line, but I'm never going to leave Israel. The defense of Israel is still critical. So there's no red line. I'm going to cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. They don't have. But there's red lines that if he crosses, he cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead as a consequence.
Oh, okay, that's nice. So the first 30,000 are acceptable, but 30,000 more is unacceptable. Nice. Cool. Thank you, Biden.
Going after. There's other ways to deal with the trauma caused by Hamas.
In other words, there's nothing Israel can do that will make Biden cut off weapons to them. I just can't figure out why Netanyahu refuses to listen to Biden. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, haven't they had a good heart-to-heart moment? Why won't Netanyahu listen? This is really infuriating because Biden knows what he's doing. Now, predictably, Netanyahu watched that same interview that we just watched, and he viewed it as a green light to do whatever he wants. And I say this because in an interview following Biden's interview, he made it very clear that he doesn't give a damn about the demands that the Biden administration is making, and he fully intends on defying him and invading Rafah. And I mean, why wouldn't he? Because Biden has made it clear there's going to be no accountability if he defies him, so why wouldn't he just do what he wants to do? Politico reports, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he intends to press ahead with an invasion of the city of Rafah on the southern border of the Gaza Strip in defiance of United States President Joe Biden, who has warned such an offensive would be a red line. Israel's Prime Minister also doubled down on his rejection of the possibility of a Palestinian state, a topic that pits Israel against most of the rest of the world. Quote, the positions that I espouse are supported by the overwhelming majority of Israelis who say to you after October 7th, we don't want to see a Palestinian state, he said. Netanyahu also directly addressed criticism from Biden, who has said the Israeli leader is hurting Israel more than helping Israel. Netanyahu hit back, saying, while he didn't know exactly what the president meant, if Biden was saying he was contravening the wishes or interests of Israel, he was wrong on both counts. Now, of course, Netanyahu knows exactly what Biden meant by that, but he went on to say that the Israeli people support him and he would reject any attempt by a U.S. president to ram a Palestinian state down their throats. So, I mean, yeah, this is what happens when you say you'll never cut off weapons to Israel. Now he's saying, okay, you know what? Not only am I going to go ahead with my ground invasion of Rafah, but also I'm going to reiterate that we don't want a Palestinian state. He's saying this after Biden says there's nothing they can do that will get me to cut off the weapons to them. This is cause and effect right here. This is the result of Biden's weak foreign policy towards Israel. They are being completely defiant because they have no reason not to be.
Correct. Unacceptable, but not in any actionable way.
But shockingly enough, we got another leaked story about how Biden is now considering conditioning military aid to Israel if they invade Gaza. Quote, while Biden has not made any decision on limiting future weapons transfers, officials said that he very well might do so if Israel launches a new operation that further imperils Palestinian civilians. It's something he's definitely thought about, said one of the officials, who, like the others, was granted anonymity to speak freely. Now, pause for a moment and guess whether or not this is going to deter Netanyahu at all.
Nope.
Do you think it will?
Nope.
Are you skeptical?
Yep.
Me too, because back in November, Biden then said that conditioning aid was a worthwhile thought, but never actually followed through with it. So here's what's going to happen. Netanyahu is going to defy Biden once again and go ahead with the ground invasion of Rafah as planned, and thousands more innocent civilians will die, and Biden is not going to do a single thing about it. Because this is what we've seen again and again and again for months now. And I would love for Biden to prove me wrong, but why should we expect anything to change if there's been no accountability? If Biden isn't going to make a policy change? The answer is we shouldn't. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So, I mean, it's exhausting because this is going to keep happening if Biden doesn't actually rein them in. And he said very clearly, not going to do shit. So this is the outcome of that. And I mean, Biden can condemn Netanyahu both publicly and privately as much as he wants, but if he continues to supply Netanyahu with weapons that he's using to exterminate Gazans, Biden owns these war crimes. That makes him complicit. And I'm glad that Biden is no longer doubting the number of civilian casualties coming out of Gaza, but it's hard to fathom just how big of a number 30,000 is, and 12,000 of which are children. But I want to pivot now, and rather than talking about diplomacy and the politics of this, talk about the actual people being affected by this. And CNN actually did a phenomenal job at putting these large numbers into perspective and really humanizing Israel's victims here.
Yeah, so like it's wild to me that like the line, imaginary line, because it certainly doesn't exist. As long as there's no consequences, then for all intents and purposes there is no red line. You can say there is, but the red line, you talking about a red line and where it is multiple times doesn't mean anything if nothing happens if the red line gets crossed. Yeah, there's nothing you can do. Cut off the supply of cookies. The kid now behave. So many children are malnourished now. There will be more casualties even if there are no bombings. Correct. I mean, there's reports now that there's, still, there's still Israeli protesters blocking aid trucks.
So let's watch that.
These are tiny figures of children on the walls of our studio, one for almost each of the 12,800 kids who have died in Gaza, according to numbers from Gaza's health ministry. The death toll, quite frankly, is hard to keep up with. Airstrikes and now malnutrition and dehydration are killing them. Premature births are up. Mothers, dehydrated and traumatized, struggle to breastfeed. They can't find formula. They can't find clean water. And without relief, the threat from famine could eclipse that of airstrikes, like the one this past weekend in Rafah that killed 5-month-olds. Wasim.
No, there is a simple solution. Israel stops. That's it. This is not defending themselves. Like, stop saying that shit. Okay? Stop. This is not defending themselves. Stop saying that shit. That's not, no.
And Naim Abu Anza, twins, long awaited by their parents who finally conceived 11 years after they married, according to Reuters. Their mother, Rania, told the news agency, "We were asleep. We were not shooting and we were not fighting. What is their fault? What is their fault? What is her fault?" In October, an Israeli strike killed 11-year-old Malak Sharaf, along with her 10-year-old brother Malik, and their 6- and 3-year-old sisters Yasmin and Noor, according to the Washington Post. And 13 of their cousins also died. In October, Al Jazeera reported that an airstrike on a home where Gaza bureau chief Wael al-Dadu's family was sheltering after being displaced killed his wife, his 15-year-old son Mahmoud, his 7-year-old daughter Sham, and his 1.5-year-old grandson Adam. In November, brother and sister Tariq and Reem, 5 and 3 years old, were asleep side by side when an airstrike killed them in southern Gaza. Their grandfather, Khalid Nabhan, told CNN he was wishing, hoping that they were only sleeping.
Yeah, so tell me, how is this how is this defending? What about this looks like self-defense? What I mean is they're seriously crossing. They've been doing that for months. They've been doing that for months. There's no self-defense here. There's no point in opening up the discussion with, but Israel has a right to defend itself. Right? That ship has sailed. Yeah, invasion equals defending, the New English.
But they weren't sleeping. They were gone. Al Jazeera reported that Salma Jaber was fleeing Gaza City with her family in December when they came under fire, and the 4-year-old was shot in the neck and died. The middle child in the family, Salma's father described her as mischievous and intelligent. And in January, 6-year-old Hind Rajab was trapped in a car for days with the bodies of several family members, all killed trying to escape northern Gaza. This harrowing audio of her cousin calling the Palestine Red Crescent for help captured the moment that their car came under attack from an Israeli tank.
انت جوا السيارة الو
Hind's body was found the following month, along with 2 ambulance workers who had gone missing trying to rescue her. There are too many victims to name. There's too many to fathom, and there are countless orphans, like Lana, whose story CNN's Jomana Karadse told.
6-year-old Lana was under the rubble of her home for 3 days. Mommy and Daddy are underneath it, she says. I just want Mama. I want Baba. I want my family, Lana cries.
You know, we often talk about the political ramifications of this genocide and diplomacy, but as all of these conversations take place, an entire group of people with nowhere to go is being exterminated. And that fact should never be lost on us as we have these conversations and continue to have these conversations. Let this be a radicalizing moment for all of us, because it demonstrates the barbarity and cruelty of our system, and any lawmaker who supports this, and there are a lot of them who support this. John Fetterman, for example, vocalized support for Israel going into Rafah. They're cheerleading Israel on as countless people suffer.
Once again, my English has reached its limit. That's all good.
And die. Now, at a State of the Union, Biden announced a port that he's creating to allow food into Gaza since Israel is blocking aid from getting in. And he wouldn't have to do this if his ally actually listened to what he wanted, but his ally isn't going to listen to what he wants since he's not holding him accountable. But that port is going to take 60 days, according to expert estimates. And as that time passes, this is going to continue to happen.
Aid agencies say children are facing extreme malnutrition and dehydration. 15 children have already died because of it, according to the Ministry of Health. And with so many orphaned and injured, health workers now commonly use a heartbreaking euphemism: wounded children, no surviving family. So with fears of a full-blown famine for millions across Gaza, the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will travel to Cyprus to discuss plans for a maritime aid corridor to the Gaza coast. As Nada Bashir reports, right now parents are saying goodbye to their sons and daughters. And of course, while these images of their reality are extremely distressing, the mothers who were interviewed say that they do want the world to see.
Tiny limbs, bones protruding. The constant sound of crying from children now facing starvation in Gaza. In this overrun hospital ward, anxious mothers watch on as doctors provide whatever care they still can. But for some, there is nothing more to be done.
And the port and aid that is being built for will be defended by Israel, who's preventing aid getting in the first place. Yep.
3-year-old Mila, who had been suffering from acute malnutrition, now another victim of this merciless war. She was healthy. There was nothing wrong with her before, Mila's mother says. Then suddenly, everything dropped. She wasn't eating anything. We had no milk, no eggs, nothing. She used to eat eggs every day before the war, but now we have nothing. Across Gaza, too many are feeling the pain of this deepening hunger crisis. Small children, emaciated and malnourished. These were little Yazan's final moments, his tiny fingers gripped in his mother's hand. He, like Mila, would not make it. Others are still just barely holding on, but there is no telling how long they will survive. Standing beside Mila's body, Dr. Ahmed Salem says many children at this hospital are now dying due to a lack of food and oxygen supplies. With limited aid getting in, many have grown desperate, searching for food wherever they can. 9-year-old Muhammad says he walks for about a mile every day to collect water for his family. You seem sad. Why? This journalist asks him. Because of the war, he says. It is all too much.
It is heartbreaking.
On Tuesday, UN experts accused Israel of intentionally starving the Palestinian people in Gaza, noting that the Israeli military is now targeting both civilians seeking aid and humanitarian convoys. Israel has denied targeting civilians and says that there is, quote, no limit to the amount of humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza. But the reality on the ground paints a very different picture.
Or another way of putting it, they fucking lied about it.
There is no food, no water, no flour, cooking oil, or anything, this woman says. Death is better than this. According to a senior UN official, at least a quarter of Gaza's population is now said to be just one step away from famine.
It is gut-wrenching to watch these images. Now, as bad as it is right now, just stop for a moment and imagine what an invasion of Rafah would look like and how much worse it would get for these folks, if you can imagine that. But yes, it could somehow get even worse because there are people staying in the middle of the street in tents right now, starving to death. So imagine what a ground invasion would mean for these folks. This is a genocide. Full stop. Don't take my word for it. Read South Africa's genocide case. And if you aren't convinced after reading that, then I think you're being purposefully obtuse because this is a genocide and history is going to view this as a genocide. Netanyahu needs to be brought to justice and face war crimes charges at The Hague, and Israel needs to be sanctioned and cut off entirely from the international community. But yet, we can't even get Biden to cut off their weapons or allow a single ceasefire resolution to pass on the UN Security Council. This situation is just so frustrating. And I'm not sure, what Biden's next step is going to be or how this is going to play out in the coming months. But we are living through one of the largest atrocities in human history, and all this talk about politics and diplomacy shouldn't distract us from the fact that human beings are suffering right now, and our government is choosing to let it happen. This is a choice Biden can stop right now if he chooses to cut off weapons, but he's not doing that, and as a result, he's complicit. He's just as guilty as Netanyahu, in my opinion, for allowing this to continue when he has the power to stop it.
True. Very, very true. It is frustrating. Biden is on video saying if Israel didn't exist, the U.S. would have to invent it. Welcome, Riot Girl. So does the U.S. government continue to ship weapons? Yeah, there's no sign. There's no there's no sign that the U.S. government is going to stop. There's no statements, no indication, no plan put forth that the U.S. is going to stop sending them weapons. It's not on the table. It's not on the table. In the interview from yesterday, Biden said the U.S. won't stop. Yeah, that's what we were going over. Mike Figueroa played the clip. Let's shift gears here. Kentucky landlords can deny prospective tenants using federal housing assistance. Cool. Nice. A very good system. A new law in Kentucky will allow landlords to deny prospective tenants who use federal housing assistance vouchers to pay rent. The new law is likely to make it more difficult for people with disabilities, those experiencing homelessness, low-income families, and some veterans access affordable housing. It also likely negates existing ordinances banning source of income discrimination in Louisville and Lexington. So yeah, I mean, like, this is the problem, really, from, you know, what we were talking about earlier, that at the end of the day, it's commodification. It's commodification that's the issue. The city say the ordinances are essential to dealing with homelessness, but GOP Senate President Robert Stivers said on Wednesday zoning and other local policies are to blame for the crisis. The city of Louisville and the city of Lexington have a homelessness problem directly related to bad policy that they've passed. Other supporters say the government cannot force property owners to participate in federal programs. Democratic Governor Andy Beshear vetoed the measure on Tuesday, saying it would make it harder for some people to access shelter. We should never make it harder for someone to obtain a roof over their head and a safe place to call home. The Republican-controlled assembly overrode the governor's veto on Wednesday last week. And moments before the legislation overrode the veto, Lexington Democratic Senator Reginald Thomas spoke on the Senate floor. House Bill 18 takes away local government control because now the General Assembly wants to dictate how local governments are to act to prohibit discrimination. Because of an emergency clause, the law goes into effect as soon as it's received by the Secretary of State. So that's nice. So basically, landlords can now, in Kentucky, deny tenants housing on the basis of them receiving benefits like federal housing vouchers. Hey, Mouse Hunter, how's it going? This should make us cry out make us all cry every day. Yep. It's really tough to watch. It really is. Yep, red state living. That's some good news. Yeah. Florida teachers can discuss LGBTQ topics under the Don't Say Gay law, the settlement says. Students and teachers can discuss sexual orientation and gender identity in Florida classrooms, provided it's not part of instruction under a settlement reached yesterday, between Florida education officials and civil rights attorneys who had challenged the law, which critics dubbed the Don't Say Gay bill. The settlement clarifies what is allowed in Florida classrooms following a passage 2 years ago of the law prohibiting instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity in early grades. Opponents say the law had created confusion about whether teachers could identify themselves as LGBTQ+, or if they could even have rainbow stickers in the classroom. Other states use Florida's law as a template to pass prohibition on classroom instruction on gender identity or sexual orientation. Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, and North Carolina are among the states with versions of the law. Under the terms of the settlement, the Florida Board of Education will send instructions to every school district saying Florida law does not prohibit discussing LGBTQ+ people nor prevent anti-bullying rules on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity or disallow gay-straight alliance groups. The settlement also spells out that the law is neutral, meaning what applies to LGBTQ+ people also applies to heterosexual people, and that it doesn't apply to library books not being used for instruction in the classroom. The law doesn't apply to books with incidental references to LGBTQ+ characters or same-sex couples, as they are not instructions on sexual orientation or gender identity any more than a math problem asking students to add bushels of apples instruction on apple farming, according to the settlement. What the settlement does is it reestablishes the fundamental principle that I hope all Americans agree with, which is every kid in this country is entitled to an education at a public school where they feel safe, their dignity is respected, and where their families and parents are welcome, said Roberta Kaplan, the lead attorney for the plaintiffs, said in an interview. This shouldn't be a controversial thing. In a statement, Florida Governor DeSantis' office described the deal as a major win with the law formerly known as the Parental Rights in Education Act remains intact. We fought hard to ensure that this law couldn't be maligned in court as it was in the public arena by the media and large corporate donors, said Ryan Newman, an attorney for the state of Florida. What? We are victorious and Florida's classroom will remain a safe place under the Parental Rights in Education Act. It wasn't before? Like, are you saying that, like, you guys made the classrooms unsafe previously? The law has been championed by the Republican governor since its passage in 2022 by the GOP-controlled Florida legislature. It barred instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity in kindergarten through third grade, and then it was expanded to all grades. Republican lawmakers had argued that parents should broach these subjects with children and that the law protected children from being taught about inappropriate material. But, like, that was always the case, right? I always wondered, does Ron DeSantis really lives under the assumption that sexual orientation would really change when it isn't discussed in classes? If he did, I'm seriously doubting his mental state. I mean, like, there's nothing complicated past the point that this is just bigotry. This is just bigotry and hatred. That's it. There's no logic. There's no rationale to it. It's just bigotry. But opponents of the law said it created a chilling effect in classrooms. Some teachers said they were unsure if they could mention or display a photo of their same-sex partner in the classroom. In some cases, books dealing with LGBTQ+ topics were removed from classrooms and lines mentioning sexual orientation were excised from school musicals. The Miami-Dade County School Board in 2022 decided not to adopt a resolution recognizing LGBTQ History Month, even though it had done so a year earlier. The law also triggered the ongoing legal battle between DeSantis and Disney over the control of government district of Walt Disney World in Central Florida after DeSantis took control of the government in what the company described as retaliation for its opposition to the legislation. DeSantis touted the fight with Disney during his run for the 2024 GOP presidential nomination, which he ended earlier this year. Yeah, what a success that was, huh? Civil rights attorneys sued Florida education officials on behalf of teachers, students, and parents, claiming the new law was unconstitutional, but the case was dismissed last year by a federal judge in Tallahassee who said they lacked standing to sue. The case was appealed to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Kaplan said they believed the appellate court would have reversed the lower court's decision, but continuing the lawsuit would have delayed any resolution for years to come. The last thing he wanted for the kids in Florida was more delay. So there you have it. Trump's campaign goes into damage control mode after he suggests cutting Medicare and Social Security benefits. Yeah. Donald Trump on Monday handed President Biden a gift while calling in to CNBC. When asked about how the U.S. could cut spending and his outlook on handling entitlements like Social Security and Medicare, Trump suggested cuts could be made to the program, which offer guaranteed financial support to retired and disabled workers. Quote, there's a lot of things you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting, and in terms of also theft and bad management of entitlements, tremendous bad management of entitlements. There's tremendous amount of things, a number of things you can do. Holy yikes. Jesus. There are things that you can do, tremendous things, lots of things. You wouldn't believe the number of things that you could possibly do, things. Trump told CNBC's Joe Kernan in a rambling response to the question that touched the stock market, oil drilling, and his administration's response to COVID. I was told that Republicans booing cuts a year ago was some important thing. Right, and they did it this State of the Union. They said, no, we don't want to do it. Yeah. I read the list of books which were banned. Got to admit, most books I didn't know before, but P.P. Landstrom, give me a break. I don't know that book, unfortunately. He added, I know they're going to end up weakening Social Security because the country is weak, and the apparent suggestion that Biden would make cuts to the program. Trump's campaign quickly jumped into damage control mode, sending out a press release saying the former president's remark had focused on protecting entitlements like Social Security and Medicare, and that he would get rid of waste, and fraud. But Biden seized upon Trump's remark just as quickly, telling a crowd of voters in New Hampshire that Trump had said cuts to the program were on the table. Biden vowed to protect the entitlements more than 70 million Americans rely on. It was so absurd. How much people hyped that up. Yep. Cosmolant, welcome. I won't cut Social Security and I won't cut Medicare, Biden said per CNN. I will protect and strengthen Social Security. It translates to Pippi Longstocking. I feel like I've seen that name before. Oh, I remember. She's like Supergirl. A representative for the Trump campaign told Business Insider in an emailed statement that the former president delivered on his promise to protect Social Security and Medicare in his first term and will continue to strongly protect Social Security and Medicare in his second term. The only candidate who poses a threat to Social Security and Medicare is Joe Biden, whose massive invasions of millions of illegal aliens will, if Biden allows them to stay, cause Social Security and Medicare to collapse. Which, question mark? How? Of course, this is a lie because they actually don't have access to Social Security and Medicare. This is just fear-mongering. Social Security and Medicare have long been contentious issues across both parties. Notably, Trump had previously urged Republican lawmakers to keep their hands off the program during the fight to raise the debt ceiling last year, and that under no circumstances should Republicans vote to cut a single penny from Medicare or Social Security. Cut waste, fraud, and abuse everywhere that we can find it, and there's plenty of it. But do not cut benefits our seniors worked for and paid their entire lives. Save Social Security, don't destroy it. And with many retirees relying on benefits, any cuts to the program could have a significant impact on financial outlook. As Business Insider previously reported, about 13% of retirees are in poverty, and the majority of Americans over age 65 are living on $30,000 or less a year. Very good system. Phenomenal indictment of the system that we live under, where the majority of Americans who are 65 and older are living on less than minimum wage. So, that's cool. That's nice. Eric, how's it going? Additionally, a recent report from Senator Bernie Sanders found that without Social Security income, about 38% of Americans on the same age group would be living in poverty, based on the data from Center of Budget and Policy Priorities. Biden vowed to protect Americans from any cuts to Social Security and Medicare in his budget proposals released on Monday, yesterday, stating that the president would reject any effort to cut or undermine the Medicare or Social Security benefits that seniors and people with disabilities have earned and paid into their entire working lives. Surprise, surprise. At the end of the day, Republicans would and they would, if they have the opportunity, would cut Social Security and Medicare. Not a secret. Not new either. It's a Swedish children's book character. Yeah. She's like Superwoman or Supergirl, I guess. So before we get to the final story, apparently, GOP Representative Ken Buck to leave Congress at the end of this week. Republican Representative Ken Buck of Colorado, a hardline conservative who has clashed with his own party at times, announced on Tuesday that he will leave Congress at the end of the week. Buck criticized dysfunction on Capitol Hill and discussing his decision to leave, telling CNN's Dana Bush, "It is the worst year of the 9 years and 3 months that I've been in Congress, and having talked to former members, it's the worst in 40 to 50 years to be in Congress. But I'm leaving because I think there's a job to do out there. This place has just evolved into bickering and nonsense that really not going to do the job for the American people. That's your party's fault." The Colorado's Republican departure from the House will shake up the chamber's partisan breakdown, where Republicans control a very narrow majority, a major challenge for Speaker Johnson, who has frequently been forced to rely on votes from Democrats as well as Republicans to get major pieces of legislation across the finish line. Buck's decision to step down before the end of his term will trim Republicans' slim edge to 2018 seats over 213 for Democrats with 3 vacancies. With that breakdown, Republicans could only afford to lose 2 votes to pass legislation on party line votes. Pressed by Bash whether Trump's status as a presumptive GOP nominee influenced his decision, Buck said, whether he was the nominee or not, I think our system is broken in how we choose candidates, and I want to get involved in that process. Everywhere I go in Colorado, I hear that people are not happy with Trump and they're not happy with President Biden. I'm going to find the right organization to join. I'm going to start working on that issue. We have better candidates up and down the ballot. Buck announced last year that he would not seek re-election, citing stagnation in Congress and his party's election denialism as factors for his decision to not run in 2024. So, yep, another one bites the dust. The foremost question, will he be replaced by another Republican? Maybe, if they win the election. So that's interesting. Boeing, as folks may have noticed, has had a lot of quality control issues, and a lot of incidents have happened recently. And now this. A Boeing whistleblower, John Barnett, found dead in the U.S., apparently by suicide. Apparently. John Barnett worked for Boeing for more than 30 years before retiring in 2017. In the days before his death, he had been giving evidence in a whistleblower lawsuit against the company. Boeing said it was saddened to hear of Mr. Barnett's passing. The Charleston County coroner confirmed his death on Monday. It said that the 62-year-old had died from self-inflicted wound on March 9th, and police were investigating. Mr. Barnett had worked for the U.S. plane giant for more than 30 years until his retirement in 2017 on health grounds. From 2010, he worked as a quality manager at the North Charleston plant, making the 787 Dreamliner a state-of-the-art airliner used mainly on long-haul routes. In 2019, Mr. Barnett told the BBC that under pressure workers had been deliberately fitting substandard parts to aircraft on the production line. He also said he uncovered serious problems with oxygen systems, which could mean 1 in 4 breathing masks would not work in an emergency. He said as soon as he started working in South Carolina, he had become concerned that the push to get new aircraft built meant the assembly process was rushed and safety was compromised, something the company had denied. Clearly, that's not the case. He later told the BBC that workers had failed to follow procedure intended to track components to the factory, allowing defective components to go missing. He said in some cases, substandard parts had been removed from scrap bins and fitted to planes that were being built to prevent delays on the production line. He also claimed the tests on emergency oxygen systems to be fitted on the 787 showed a failure rate of 25%, meaning that 1 in 4 could fail to deploy in a real-life emergency. Mr. Barnett said he alerted managers to his concern, but no action had been taken. Boeing denied his assertions. However, a 2017 review by U.S. regulator, the FAA, did uphold some of Mr. Barnett's concerns. It established that the location of at least 53 non-conforming parts in the factory was unknown and that they were considered lost. Boeing was being ordered to take remedial action. On the oxygen cylinder issue, the company said in 2017 it had identified some oxygen bottles received from the supplier that were not deploying properly, but it had denied that any of them were actually fitted on the aircraft. After retiring, he embarked on a long-running legal action against the company. He accused it of denigrating his character and hampering his career because of the issues he pointed out, charges that were rejected by Boeing. At the time of his death, Mr. Barnett had been in Charleston for legal interviews linked to that case. Last week, he had given a formal deposition, which he was questioned by Boeing's lawyer before being cross-examined by his own counsel. He had been due to undergo further questioning on Saturday. When he did not appear, inquiries were made at his hotel. He was subsequently found dead in his truck in the hotel park. Speaking to BBC, his lawyer described his death as tragic. In a statement, Boeing said, "We are saddened by Mr. Barnett's passing, and our thoughts are with his friends and family." Man, this seems like some dark movie plot. I don't know. Because, man, it's just so... It's just so unbelievable that this dude spent his entire, life fighting Boeing, and that he would just be found dead, apparently from a self-inflicted wound. Not no specifics there on how that came to be. Just before he was due to continue to provide evidence and testify under oath against Boeing. I mean, the suspicion, the level of sus, okay, is off the charts. I forgot the difference between Germany and the U.S. If a member of German parliament will be replaced by a member of the same party in the U.S., there will be an election. Yes, with the exception of the Senate, and correct me if I'm wrong, but with the exception of the Senate, I believe if there is a vacancy, the governor might put a representative until there's a special election. I have no doubt Boeing was involved in his death. Yeah, I mean, the level of sus is just off the charts. It varies from state to state. Okay, so I could be wrong. There might, in this case, it would be, oh man, I forgot. Where's Ken Buck from? I just saw it too. Colorado. So I guess it depends on the I guess it depends on the rules of Colorado. Yeah, so don't listen to me. It might vary from state to state, so it might be the case that he can just be replaced. It might be the case that there's a special election. It's kind of late for a special election anyway. Yeah, I don't know what the procedure is going to be for that. So, don't listen to me. Having a special election between the primary and general in November would be weird. Yeah. His death comes at a time when production standards at both Boeing and its key supplier Spirit Aerosystems are under intense scrutiny. This follows an incident in early January when an unused emergency exit door blew off a brand new Boeing 737 MAX shortly after takeoff from Portland International Airport. A preliminary report from the U.S. National Transportation and Safety Board suggests that four key bolts designed to hold the door securely in place were not fitted. Last week, the FAA said a 6-week audit of the company had found multiple instances where the company alleged to fail to comply with manufacturer quality control requirements. Yeah, and you're telling me that a dude who spent like his entire career, his entire work is to go after Boeing? You're telling me that this dude drops dead and of a apparent self-inflicted wound, which we don't know what? Yeah, they heavily quote in quotation marks. That this dude just ends up being dead, especially when he's due to testify more after these disastrous incidents. Nah. That's right, Colorado. Nah. That is incredibly suspicious. Maybe it's just me, but I wouldn't imply homicide just by reading those articles. It's not implying. I think it's a reasonable suspicion. I think it's reasonable suspicion given the circumstances. I wonder if that hotel parking lot has cameras. Maybe. Boeing gets paid over $30 billion a year to make weapons of war. What's one more death, right? Especially if said death happens to come at a time when someone, not just someone, but a key employee who could spill the beans on the shenanigans you've been doing just happens to be dead. You know. There's some suspicions, but just from the articles, I can't get to there. I mean, it's not unheard of. I mean, the motivation would be there to protect their profits, given the information that this guy has. The timing. I mean, it's just incredibly suspicious, right? In the middle of providing testimony, exactly. In the middle of providing testimony, he offs himself, even though, he has an entire history of trying to get his point across, his message across, that Boeing is doing some messed up stuff in terms of safety and putting people's lives in danger. And he just offs himself? Nah. The math ain't mathin'. It's just very, very suspicious circumstances. Will we actually ever find out? I don't know. Will Boeing ever be held to account? Highly doubtful. But yeah. I'm not saying you're wrong, just saying I need more evidence. I mean, the circumstances is pretty damning in my opinion. Like, cause like, what scenario would it like, would it make sense? Would it make sense, like, in the middle of a testimony, a key witness just decides to off themselves? On what reasons? Did he have a history of, like, ideation? No. It just doesn't make any sense. You won't get it. More evidence, that is. Yeah, and if it ends up being the case that, it's true that Boeing had a hand in it, we would never probably know. Would a jury convict someone based on it? Well, Boeing seems to think that this guy's testimony may have serious implications, so it stands to reason that they have motivations to make this guy disappear, right? But they're not on trial for that, so we don't know. Does that make sense? They're right now, they're being scrutinized because of very clear safety concerns, and that's what they're being investigated for. And again, just I've been an important key witness decides to disappear just conveniently. I don't know. The timing is just too on the nose. Anyways. Folks, unfortunately, it is about that time. 7 o'clock on the dot, almost. I do got to get going. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. Thank you, Conscious Canuck, for the subscriptions. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you for the follows. I appreciate it. Everything. You guys are what makes this channel grow. Don't forget, if you enjoy the content, hit the follow button. It really does help us out. If you're on the YouTube, like the stream, subscribe, do that awesome stuff. If you guys want to support the channel and want to wear some cool merch while doing so, you can hit the exclamation mark merch, and you can check that out as well. Thank you, Heat. Thank you, Michael Hassler, for modding the chat. Thank you guys for hanging out. I appreciate it. Thank you, Irk. I appreciate it. Thank you, the Simulacra, Blue Brother, Dan Anonymously, Mouselander, Cosmolant, Bipedal Meatbag, Heat, Riot Girl, thank you. Conscious Canuck, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Let's see. Did I get everybody? I think I did. Derry Bennett, thank you. Thanks for stream. Sorry for the Israel thing. I really had to mix it up. No worries. I appreciate that. Thank you guys. As always, folks, again, please do the social media stuff. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern time. As always, folks. Also join the Discord. Yeah, join the Discord. Exclamation mark Discord. Girly Bear, I've been lurking. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Anything like that helps. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Girly Bear. I appreciate it. As always, folks, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. Aviana, I hope to see you guys in the next one tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern time. See ya. Thank you to the YouTube folks as well. Hang tight. Alright, folks, we're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.